Thanks, Maya. So all looks like we are live on Facebook. We'll give it another minute and then we can get started. Hi, Brad. Hi, Kirsten. Hi, Kiana.
Aloha, Chair. Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Hi, everybody.
Friday.
Aloha, Chair. Brad. Kiana.
All right. Well, it looks like it's 1 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. It is September 20th, 1 p.m., and this is the Honolulu Climate Change Commission. Karan, do you think you could do roll call for us, please?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Chair Islam,
Present.
Vice Chair Otsuka,
Here.
Commissioner Romine,
Present.
Commissioner Onosen.
Present.
I hope I pronounced that correctly. Is Commissioner Fox with us? I don't see her.
I don't see her.
Oh, there she is. Commissioner Fox, present.
Great. Looks like we have
Quorum. Yes,
quorum.
we have. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Coran.
Thank you.
All right. Moving along, we're going to go to item number 3, which is approval of our August 23rd, 2024 meeting minutes. That was included in our commission packet. Have all the commissioners had a chance to look at those minutes? Great. Any comments or discussion that we'd like to have? All right, I hear none. Could I get a motion to move?
So moved, Chair.
Is there a second?
Sorry, second. Yeah.
With a second, great, thank you so much. All in favor? Please raise your hand and say aye. Aye, great, all in favor, excellent, thank you so much. Great, I'm gonna move on to item number 4. It's with our pleasure to welcome Dr. Kealoha Fox to the Climate Change Commission. Welcome. Dr. Fox replaces Dr. Rosie Aligato's seat on the commission. She is a Kanaka Maoli scientist, practitioner, and business leader, and brings to us her expertise on the relationship between climate change, community health, and equity. She serves as president of the Institute of Climate and Peace and was a technical contributor to the 5th National Climate Assessment. Dr. Fox, we were so happy to have you here on the commission. Is there anything that you would like to share with us today?
Oh, thank you so much, Commissioner. I just want to thank everyone for welcoming me with so much aloha today on Friday. And it's great to be a part of this group. And I just merely hope to live up to the legacy of folks like Dr. Rosie Aligato and Dr. Victoria Keener, who I admire their work very much. And I wholeheartedly appreciate how much they contributed over the years to this commission.
Thank you so much. I think your contributions will be well received by everyone. Any comments or remarks by our fellow commissioners? Kirsten, I see your hand up.
Oh, look at that. I didn't even know, but I will say welcome. I'm so happy to have you here and to be able to explore the intersections with health with you. And now I'm going to put my hand down.
Great. Thanks, Kirsten. Awesome. I love it. I love the energy on a Friday. Okay, so we're just going to keep moving along to our agenda. I'd like to get to agenda number 5, which is a update and a report by our climate change office. I'm going to welcome Director Ben Sullivan.
Thank you so much, Chair. It's a pleasure to be here with you on this Aloha Friday, and I want to extend my welcome as well to Dr. Kealoha Fox for joining the Commission. Very excited about that. It's a pleasure to see all of you. I'm going to give a brief update of some of the goings on that you may or may not be aware of. We have a few staff changes. Other than myself, we were all sad to see Matt go, but he's doing what he needed to do. Another change in staff is that energy efficiency specialist Marissa Kunch was promoted to the energy program manager. So as you may know, Marissa has done an incredible job with the benchmarking program up to now and building it out, and has been hard working on an affordable housing retrofit program as well. That is something that we have had in the works and is continuing to be developed over time. So she's stepping up into the program manager role and will be overseeing a lot of the other activities, including electrification and transportation and the climate action plan update and other things. So we're really excited to welcome her into that role. We will have a position open, and I always like to get the opportunity to spell that out for folks. The energy efficiency specialist position is now advertised on our website, and those that might be interested are always welcome to apply, and we'll be reviewing applications on a rolling basis as they come in. So with that, I will jump into projects and programs and let you know that I'm very excited to tell you that the 2025 to 2030 Climate Action Plan update is kicking off as of this weekend. So the team has been hard at work doing all the preparation for this kickoff, and this weekend will be our first outreach event. So as you may know, the ordinance requires that we update the Climate Action Plan every 5 years. So that's Ordinance 2047. And here we are coming into 5 years of having our plan in place and having done a lot of implementation. And we're excited about the opportunity. So this Sunday, September 22nd, team members will be at the 48th Annual Intertribal Powwow at Bishop Museum. And they'll be there doing some engagement with those who come to attend the event, talking about what it is we're doing with the Climate Action Plan. We'll be promoting it through a survey. That survey is really intended for us to learn how Oahu families think about climate action and how we can better support their choices to reduce carbon pollution, save money, and live healthier and safer lives. So very, very exciting. The following weekend, we're going to be at the finish line of the Wide Bicycling League's Ride Aloha Festival at Kapiolani Park on Sunday, and doing a similar outreach. So this is really just the beginnings, but engaging a lot of folks, talking about all the good things that the city is doing and wants to do, and then really importantly, learning from community directly about what is most impactful to them and what we can do that will both help them reduce carbon pollution and also be happier in their lives and potentially save them money and make their lives more comfortable and safe. So excited about all that. Next update is exciting. I think you've heard a little bit about the success of our hazard mitigation and long-term disaster recovery team, which is led by Sarah Harris. They were recently given an award for the long-term disaster recovery plan by the American Planning Association. So they were HCPO a few weeks ago and took receipt of that award. I believe it was in the area of just kind of best practice is what I believe is how it was called out, but really tremendous work there. And we're excited to potentially give a future update on that plan at a point in which the commission decides they want to hear more about it. Our adaptation program manager, Alex Yee, was also at HCPO and gave a really interesting panel presentation that involved all 4 counties. And so it was an opportunity to really look and reflect at the different approaches and the similarities between both climate action and adaptation planning across the counties. As you may know, some of the counties have chosen to consolidate both climate action and adaptation in one planning document and then distribute implementation as they go. And here at the Resilience Office, we've taken a different approach in that we have separate plans. But the most important thing is really how are we implementing and how are we engaging the community? And so there's a lot of similarities and lessons learned, and we were happy to be able to have an opportunity to share that. Last brief update, and this, I think we gave you a preview that this was coming, but the adaptation team has the Climate Champions program, and they did go to Bishop Museum last weekend. It was last Friday night, and presented with all the Climate Champion partners, which was a really, really wonderful event. I was happy to be able to join the team out there at Bishop Museum. So that includes, the Climate Champions list includes Wildfire Management Organization, Ma'o Organic Farms, Malama Loko'ia Foundation, Malama Learning Center, Trees for Honolulu's Future, and the Key Project. And so they were all out there and they were talking about the work they'd done through the program. And this is just the first year of 3. So really, really great opportunity to engage in kind of the culminating event for the summer with those interns and those community organizations doing great work regarding climate adaptation. That's my report for this month, and I look forward to any questions or future discussions on some of the events and activities that we were involved in this month.
Great. Thank you, Director Sullivan. Always a great update from your office. I just want to formally congratulate you on your new position as director. It's so great to see you in this role. And also extended congratulations to Marissa Hunch for her new role as energy manager. I think we all look forward to working with her on, I think, some really important work, the affordable multifamily retrofit program and our continued work on electrification and update to our CAP. I do want to note that, yes, I think it would be great to have a presentation by Sarah Harris and her team on the long-term hazard mitigation plans. So we should talk about how we can kind of pencil that in. I think it would be a great conversation moving forward for our team. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again for all the continued great work. Vice Chair Otsuka, any comments or discussions that you'd like to share with Director Sullivan?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Ben. Thanks so much. And yes, congratulations to you and your staff for the promotion. Bill beat me to it. I was going to mention some other outreach events you might consider. Is the State Climate Commission is hosting their community climate fair. So Bill very kindly already put the information in the chat for me, but it sounds like it's the same weekend as the HBL event. And then the other event my office is going to happening that weekend. I don't know if you want to send staff out twice in one weekend, is the Day at the Lake event. So that's at the Wahiawa Freshwater State Park. So I know that maybe overlaps a little bit more with the work that you folks do and less with my office. So I just wanted to let you folks know that those are also opportunities for outreach. Yeah, I would also like to hear a presentation with CAP updates and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to coordinating with you folks. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Vice Chair Otsuka. Commissioner Romine, any comments, discussions from you?
Yeah, congrats, Ben, on the appointment to director. That's news to me, or I missed that if that was shared somewhere. So congratulations, that's great news. Also want to congratulate Sarah Harris and the team on the award at HCPO. And like we've heard from Melanie and Kiana, would definitely welcome a presentation from her and the team and some discussions on what we can do next around disaster recovery preparedness, because there's such an important intersection with that and the climate risks we're facing, as we all know. So welcome that opportunity. Also really liked hearing about the progress and ongoing success with the Climate Champions program. That's great to hear. It's a great program. So thanks for sharing that, Ben.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner Romine. Commissioner Olson?
I guess just that was a peppering of events that seem like they could be great opportunities. So maybe we can get those put in the minutes and a calendar even posted. I don't know, maybe that exists, but it'd be fun to spread the word about those. And yes, I would love all information from the long-term disaster recovery plan and an update on the process of the climate action plan. Being relatively new, like how is that being developed? It's great to hear that there's already outreach as it starts, but I'm honestly not sure exactly where we are in the timeline of that. So yeah, maybe that's just a question that we could get some more information and know how to stay plugged into that. And yeah, that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner Olson. Commissioner Fox?
Thank you so much. Sorry, is the protocol that we each go around and share?
I've just started doing it. We can go loosely round robin. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for linking the calendar of events. I too would be interested in where the CAP is currently at now and what the timeline through the end of the year looks like as part of our updates as well.
Great. So Ben, looks like there's a couple of things that your office may be sharing with the commission at upcoming meetings. So we'll work to get those coordinated and on the agenda.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Excellent. Great. And yes, Commissioner Fox, to your point, I've just transitioning to this role, been going sort of one-on-one to each commissioner, but we can certainly go loose and have people sort of raise their hands if they have comments, but thank you for pointing it out. All right, so I want to move on to agenda item number 6, which is a presentation on Sunshine Law, by Courtney Sue Akau. She's Deputy Corporate Counsel with the City and County of Honolulu. Courtney, thank you so much for making time for us today and presenting on Sunshine Law. I had suggested this mainly because we have a few new commissioners that are coming on board, and I think it's always a good reminder, particularly since the following agenda item, we just want to sort of talk about other methodology strategies in which we can continue to convey information to the city and to the public per our charter. So Courtney, thank you again for making time. The floor is now yours.
Of course, thank you, Commissioner. And hello, Climate Change Commission. My name is Courtney Suako. I am the Deputy Corporation Counsel assigned to advise the Climate Change Commission on legal matters. And, I've been very honored to be in the position of advising the Commission since its very inception. However, it has been some time since I've done a overview on the Sunshine Law. So this is a good opportunity for a recap. Let me share my screen and we can get into it. Let's see, there we go. All right. Sorry, just to check, is my screen okay? Okay, great, thank you. Okay. So, as the title says, this is an introduction to the Sunshine Law. It was prepared specifically for the purposes of the Climate Change Commission. So just a note, I do see some individuals who may also be with the city or the state on the meeting. So just to note that this presentation was prepared for the commission. If you have any questions on Sunshine Law, better to direct those questions towards your respective deputy corp counsels or state AGs. As the chair mentioned, this is meant to be a brief overview of the Sunshine Law. So just the not so fun disclaimers here. It does not, unfortunately, replace individual review and knowledge of the language and requirements of HRS Chapter 92, which is the Sunshine Law. And this presentation is not meant to constitute advice on specific situations that may arise or actually have arisen. It is meant to be just an overview. So unfortunately, the nitty-gritty of the Sunshine Law, I can't get into that too much today. Also, logistical details like scheduling and notice and agendas like that is more outside of the scope of the presentation. So just a note on potential future resources as well. The Sunshine Law is administered by the State of Hawaii Office of Information Practices. They actually do have a pretty maybe intimidating in amount, but they do have a pretty comprehensive range of resources available they're specifically written by the office to help train new members of boards or commissions, or even state neighborhood boards or county neighborhood boards on the Sunshine Law. So they do have a introductory video that might be worth taking a look after this meeting if you haven't looked at it already. There's a quiz that's always nothing like testing knowledge than a pop quiz. But always helpful to take a look at that as well. And then they have these quick review documents, and some of them are kind of get into pretty specific detail, but always worth checking out. So for the commission's awareness, so the city is of course a creature of charter, and the charter is it's the document, it's like the city's constitution basically, and it sets forth what the powers of the city are in the charter. The commission is under the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. So that is why you receive administrative support from the office. And your powers under the charter are defined specifically under Section 6-107H. And what it says is essentially that the director of the office, so Director Sullivan, has one of the powers he has is to convene a climate change commission consisting of 5 members with expertise in climate change in Hawaii, which commission shall meet no less than twice annually for the purpose of gathering the latest science and information on climate change effects in the city and providing advice as is deemed appropriate to the Executive for Climate Change and Sustainability, the mayor, council, and executive departments of the city. So that is the full language of your authority and powers under the charter. And if you are curious about looking at the entire charter itself, it is available online, so check out that link below. So with the Sunshine Law itself, so I provided a copy paste of the entire first section of the Sunshine Law 92.1 of the HRS. And the reason for that is because, it is pretty much expressing the entire intent and purpose of the Sunshine Law. The purpose of the Sunshine Law is to essentially to ensure that the people, the public, have the ability to know and see what their public offices are doing. So, so there is a protection of the people's right to know. And there is the requirement that open meetings shall be liberally construed and exceptions shall be strictly construed against. As I mentioned earlier, the chapter is administered by the Office of Administrative Practices. When it talks about the formation and conduct of public policy, it's talking about essentially all board business, which is defined under the Sunshine Law. And that means all decisions, deliberations, discussions, and actions of government agencies, boards, and commissions. So that includes the Climate Change Commission. And then, as I mentioned earlier, open meetings are liberally construed, exceptions are narrowly construed. And we'll get more into what exceptions are later, but for purposes of this presentation, what that essentially means is that if there is a question about whether an open meeting should have happened, unless it falls in pretty strongly into one of the exceptions that are described in the later sections of the HRS, there's going to be a greater policy in favor of the open meeting. And again, that's because the Sunshine Law, its purpose is to protect the public's right to know. So we're going to go through very briefly some of the, the rungs of the Sunshine Law and what they require. Again, we're not going to go into too much detail on the intricacies of these until we get to exceptions, essentially, but let's run through it. So you are required to provide advance notice, and that's a Sunshine Law requirement. So you are required to provide advance notice of a public meeting. In general, I think that the office has been handling that. So whenever Corinne circulates the proposed agenda, that's because there is a requirement that the agenda be posted at least 6 calendar days prior to the meeting. And that gets posted on your website, I understand. All meetings need to be open to the public. So the HRS, or Sunshine Law rather, definition of a meeting is convening of a board for which a quorum is required in order to make a decision or to deliberate toward a decision upon a matter over which the board has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power. So the commission has advisory power over the latest science in climate change per the charter. So yeah, essentially when you hold your meetings, that's what you're discussing, right? So the exceptions are essentially the instances where you may hold a meeting that is closed to the public. So the exceptions include executive meetings, and then there is the exceptions for permitted interactions of members. And these permitted interactions are technically not considered meetings under the Sunshine Law. So that's why they are treated as an exception to the open meeting requirement. So you can hold meetings in various ways. The Sunshine Law recently created the ability to hold meetings via interactive conference technology. So that's basically what we are doing today, having the meeting via Zoom. But traditionally, of course, the meetings were held entirely in person. So there are 8 exceptions that allow a open meeting to be closed to the public. So again, default is that the meetings need to be open. So you provide notice, you post the agenda. But there are times when the meetings don't have to be open. And those kinds of meetings are called executive meetings, which are addressed in sections 92.4 and 5 of the HRS, with the exceptions specifically detailed at 92.5. I'm, of course, biased in this matter. So the exception that I'm discussing here is specifically for the consultation with the commission's attorneys on questions pertaining to the commission's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities. So in the event that you anticipate the need to consult with me, then you would want to note that on the agenda for the meeting. I will be happy to review the agenda at that point in time, but essentially when you put it on the agenda, it has to identify like exactly why you are going into the executive meeting. So you would say that it's an executive meeting to consult with the attorney on powers, duties, privileges, etc. If you see the need arising for consultation with me during the meeting, then you can also just move to go into executive session. You just need 4 out of 5 members to vote in favor. And then, of course, whatever discussion or final action is taken during that executive meeting, you still need to report it afterwards when you reconvene in the open meeting, but you can still maintain confidentiality as long as disclosure would defeat the purpose of convening the executive meeting. So you can also limit the public requirements to hold an emergency meeting, and then also just limited meetings. Those are kind of meetings where, like, say you're doing a site visit, it's at a very dangerous location. You probably don't want too many people there. That would be a basis to have a limited meeting. But I would suggest reviewing the language of the statute to determine when such meeting would apply. So Sunshine Law also requires you to allow for the opportunity for public testimony. And that's just, kind of part and parcel with the policy of the Sunshine Law. The law wants to encourage public participation and public knowledge. So part of the open meeting requirement, is also the requirement to afford all interested persons an opportunity to submit data, views, or arguments in writing on any agenda item. Part of the other Sunshine Law requirements is that you must maintain board minutes. For the most part, I believe that is being handled by the office. And of course, you went through the process of approving one of your board minutes earlier in the meeting. So now we're getting into how, I think, the commission has always been a very policy-minded commission, and that's kind of part of the nature of your charter powers. So the question of how you can conduct business when you, within the parameters of the Sunshine Law has been raised before. So I'm going to kind of get into what the Sunshine Law does allow. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but this is just the general overview of what is allowed under the Sunshine Law. So in general, if you are having a discussion about board business, and board business is matters over which the commission has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power, and that are before or are reasonably expected to come before the commission, you are generally not allowed to discuss that outside of a properly noticed meeting. The manner of communication does not matter. So we're talking just a telephone call, email, fax, whatever. You are in general, not allowed to discuss board business outside of a properly noticed meeting. But of course, as with all good things in life, there are some exceptions to the general rule. I would just say, as we're going into this discussion on the exceptions, just keep in mind that the default policy of the Sunshine Law is public knowledge and participation and awareness. So there is always going to be a greater weight towards allowing public participation versus non-public participation. So HRS section 92-2.5 has 8 exceptions under the permitted interactions of members title. So these exceptions are basically just interactions that are okay under the Sunshine Law outside of a duly noticed meeting. When we get into this section, you'll see some mention of the subsection saying 2 or more members but less than quorum. For the commission's purposes, since you are only 5 members, you hit quorum at 3 members being present. So that means that no matter what, you can only have 2 members if it says 2 or more members. Because this section is rather lengthy, I did try doing a plain language breakdown, but disclaimer, it is very simplified. I think that I would strongly advise that each individual commissioner be reviewing the actual language of the section because, again, this whole presentation is very simplified and just a big picture overview of the Sunshine Law. But I wanted to try to give like a bit of a more plain language summary just to help with that review. So these are the first 2 exceptions under the Sunshine Law. And because they're pretty lengthy, here we go. So 2.5 subsection A, basically what it's saying is that you can have 2 members discuss board business between each other to enable them to perform your duties faithfully. The only thing is that if you are having this sort of discussion between 2 members, you cannot have any commitment to vote. So you can't make the commitment and you can't seek the commitment. So in other words, if Commissioner A was talking to Commissioner B about, hey, we want to get this item on the agenda, it's to, for example, express a position or testimony on one thing, would you be willing to vote in favor of this position at the upcoming meeting? That is clearly not a permissible interaction under Sunshine Law, both because there was the ask for the vote, and then also because if Commissioner B had said, oh yes, I will, I agree that I will vote in favor, like you're asking, that would have been a violation of the Sunshine Law too. Subsection B makes it okay for 2 members to be assigned for investigative matters. There are some more detailed limitations under that. Or to present, discuss, or negotiate a position that was previously adopted by the board. Next 2 subsections, again, lengthy. So subsection C makes it okay for 2 members to discuss board officer selection in private, so more of an administrative sort of thing. Subsection D basically says that if you need to cancel a meeting because you don't have quorum or because you're having the conference technology issue. So basically there's an issue with Zoom. So if you need to cancel a meeting because of either of those issues, you can basically still proceed with the meeting in the sense that you can receive testimony, you can present on agenda items, but you can't have any deliberation or decision-making at this meeting, which I'm putting in quotes because it's not really meant to be a meeting under the Sunshine Law. You need to maintain a record of what was discussed essentially at the meeting, or presented rather, and then you need to provide that record to members of the commission at the next meeting, along with a report on what happened made by the members who were at the meeting. So basically it's just the Sunshine Law's way of saying, like, if you're having issues, you can still hold like the informational portion of the meeting. You just can't make any decisions on what's being presented at the meeting. And that's basically to protect the public's ability to participate in that decision-making process. So next, two exceptions, or three exceptions rather. So subsection E. You can have two members attend informational meetings on matters relating to board business, for example, legislative hearings, conventions, seminars, and community meetings, as long as it isn't a meeting specifically arranged for the commission. And then yet again, no commitment to vote may be made or sought, and then you must report on your attendance at the next meeting. So if the Office of Energy says, hey, we want to have a meeting with the commission to discuss an action plan, but we want to discuss it, like it's just an informational meeting. We want to talk to you about some of the policy that we're working on. Can a couple members of you come to this meeting just so that we can schedule it while people are available and just move ahead with it? That's not okay under the Sunshine Law, because that would be the informational meeting that was specifically arranged for the commission. But if it's something like UH is holding a convention on sea level rise, and it's open to the public, like you can have two members attend that sort of informational meeting. It relates to board business. The key thing here is that there can be no commitment to votes made or sought. So if a member of the public asks you, hey, can you take a certain position on this testimony and present it to the council at some point in time? Can you vote on it and encourage other commissioners to vote on this way? That's not allowed under the Sunshine Law. And the reason why the statute keeps repeating the whole no commitment to vote may be made or sought, well, a couple of reasons. Like I said earlier, part of the Sunshine Law is supposed to be to protect the public's ability to participate in the formation of public policy. The other part is that there is actual case law that determines that this sort of behavior is not okay. And we'll get into that later, but that's why there is like this whole repetition of no commitment to vote may be made or sought. Subsection F just basically says you can discuss matters with the governor so long as it isn't a matter the commission is making a decision on. Subsection G is it's okay for, again, more of an administrative exception, but it's okay for two or more members to discuss administrative matters with the director, so Ben. Subsection H, if the commission wants to provide testimony on a legislative item, but you don't have enough time to notice a meeting before the deadline to receive testimony, a statement on a position that was previously adopted can be circulated for approval. So the key language in there is that it needs to be previously adopted. And what that means is there has to have been an open meeting. The commission presented the position, it was voted on and adopted. So it has to still have gone through that actual deliberation process before it can be presented under this exception. All communications about that statement need to be in writing, and all those communications need to be posted on the commission's website within 48 hours of circulation of the statement. And this subsection does say that, when they talk about communications, it's got to be in writing, first of all, so no phone calls. And second of all, it's everything. So you have to have the draft of the statement. You have to have the emails that were exchanged discussing the statement. And all of that needs to be put onto the commission's website, excuse me. And then the last subsection, not really an exception, it's just saying that the exceptions under this section of the HRS are not technically considered meetings under the Sunshine Law. So in summary, if you ever have a question about what might not be okay under the Sunshine Law, going back again to the 92-1, the policy and purpose of the Sunshine Law is to preserve the formation or the public's ability to know and participate in the formation of public policy. So that means that anything that is perceived or interpreted as an attempt to circumvent that policy under the Sunshine Law may run afoul of its requirements. So there are two specific case law items that come up as an example. So in the first one, kind of Hele versus County of Maui, essentially the council was distributing or sharing memoranda. And those memorandum, they were discussing a potential agenda item. So it was essentially board business, right? They didn't publicly notice the memoranda. They were just distributing it between themselves. And I believe this one, although I don't have it on the PowerPoint, I believe this case law also involves a line at the end of the memoranda essentially saying, I would appreciate your favorable vote in favor of this position that I'm presenting to you. So a couple problems there with that one. Number one, the seeking of a vote one way or the other. And then number two, because it was a memoranda distributed to all members of the board and because it was on board business, that was a circumvention of the Sunshine Law, essentially. The second example, right to know commission versus our own city council, actually, involved serial one-on-one communications. So it was serial communications on a specific item of board business. It is not expressly prohibited under the Sunshine Law. Nevertheless, it was still held to be perceived as circumventing. So essentially what was happening was it was one member sending a communication to another member, and then that same member sending a communication to another member. So it was like on their own, one could argue that, it was just a communication between two members. However, that same communication was happening between other members. So that essentially, even though it was technically no more than two participating in communication at a time, it was essentially or it should have been a discussion held at a meeting. So because it should have been a meeting, that it was held to be a circumvention of the spirit of the Sunshine Law. At the end of the day, if you want to, in an abundance of caution, avoid a potential Sunshine Law violation, the rule of thumb is you only conduct your discussions, deliberations, decisions, or actions, so board business, at an open and properly noticed meeting. Of course, that is limiting based on schedules and everything. So the exceptions are set forth at 92.2.5. If you want to know whether a particular exception is allowable under the Sunshine Law, then review 92.2.5. And then, of course, there are a bunch of other guidances that are made available by OIP on their website. And I am also available for legal questions as well. So the consequences of violating the Sunshine Law, 92.3 says that if a final action, is taken in violation of the open meeting requirement or the notice requirement, it may be voidable upon proof of violation. So essentially that means that you have to take back whatever action you voted on in violation of the Sunshine Law. Anyone can sue, and whoever wins can claim the attorney's fees. If any member of the commission does a willful violation of Sunshine Law, so it's a deliberate circumvention, then that is a misdemeanor offense, and that may result in removal from the commission upon conviction. So I'm concluding this presentation with, again, copy paste of section 92.1. Because again, I think the declaration of policy and intent is basically the touchstone for the Sunshine Law. So if you, as you proceed forward in your meetings, if you ever need to just remind yourself of what the Sunshine Law is meant to do, it's always helpful to just look at 92.1 Declaration of Policy and Intent. So again, formation of public policy is supposed to be open. It's to protect the people's right to know. And if the open meetings requirement is liberally construed and closed is strictly construed against. And then if you have more specific questions on like legal matters under the Sunshine Law, feel free to just shoot me an email.
Great. Thank you, Courtney. This was very informative. Thank you for putting the deck together. I don't have many questions, but I did appreciate actually the additional language around testimony. I do know in the past that has always really been our struggle in terms of providing timely testimony. So it was good to know that, should we vote on a statement at a meeting ahead of time and publish our testimony a few days or weeks later, that all correspondence, right? Any written correspondence would also have to be published at that time. So it's good knowledge to have. Commissioners, any questions to Courtney or things you want to discuss? Kiana?
Sorry, I can't find my hand feature on this version of Zoom. Courtney, I just wanted to thank you so much for the presentation and for your patience answering all of my questions regarding Sunshine Law. So thank you. I had a couple of questions, and then Melanie, I thought it might be useful for the new commission members to understand where this might get a little bit confusing, maybe. Or I can maybe share where I found confusion when I first started the commission. So Courtney, first question, and I'm sorry if I missed this in your presentation, but we've been talking about having an in-person meeting, and we haven't yet, I think mostly due to capacity constraints from CCSR in terms of staff support. But I wanted to get a better understanding whether there are any additional constraints we should consider, specifically, and you're welcome to share anything else, but specifically, if we have an in-person meeting, do we also have to have a virtual option for folks to join? So that would mean we would need access to electricity and the internet, among other things, like have a screen and all that fun stuff. So I just wanted a better understanding if we also need to have a virtual option if we do have an in-person meeting.
Thank you for the question. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I think the office, though, would be better positioned to answer that question, since it would be one of the support things that they would need to provide, but I can look into that and shoot an email to you afterwards.
Okay, thank you. And then Melanie, please chime in at any time, but there were sort of two major items for me that I found confusing and needed further clarification from Courtney's office, but generally one on how we work on guidance documents. So we're permitted, the commission members, to work on board business. So there's two of us, and then the other difficult, or I'd say difficult, but complicated aspect of that is when we bring it to the commission for comments. So we're not allowed to have comments sent to other commissioners beforehand. So we do a live editing process. So typically what I do to try to speed up the process is I have my comments prepared on the side, and then I pop into the chat language that I recommend we change. So I'll say, pop in the chat during the meeting, the public meeting, page whatever I recommend we swap out this language, and we talk through. And the screen is shared, and we're live editing in the public meeting round. The second item I thought was kind of complicated and confusing when I first started. When we provide public comments, and I imagine it's the same process for testimony. Again, you can't send comments beforehand to other commissioners, so it's something we just live edit together. So I'd say those are two items that I needed some help with and understanding what we are and aren't allowed to do. Melanie, you want to add anything? Any other items you feel Courtney's presentation relates to that we can share?
Yeah, I just want to add to that comment about the live editing or the comments, and this was my interpretation and experience. But once the two commissioners present live in a meeting, right? It's information for the public, it's public information for the commissioners. we are allowed to email our comments and additions to the two commissioners that have ownership of that guidance document at that time. So it doesn't necessarily have to always be at the meeting, was my understanding, because then it would be viewed as a form of public comment, individual comment going through. So that was my interpretation of it, but you are correct. I have always found the process of live editing a little uncomfortable, but it just seems to be kind of the nature of how we do business, primarily because of what our charter is, right? Convening information for the public, for the city. So Courtney, I don't know if there's any way for us to sort of refine that process, but
Yeah, and can I add to that too? It's not just the charter, actually, that the reason why you've been live editing and everything is it's actually more of a sunshine law thing as well. Because the whole live editing, sharing of what your recommendations are, that is part of the formation of public policy. That's part of what you're deliberating on to reach the ultimate final action, which is the final guidance that you're going to be voting on to adopt. So I would still advise continuing that practice. I realize that it's not the most, time efficient way of going about things, but unfortunately, being that you are a Sunshine Law Commission, the Sunshine Law does require just that open discussion. So the alternative would be to just like talk those things through in a publicly noticed meeting, but I don't know if that would be much faster.
yeah, no, thanks for clarifying that as a matter of sunshine law.
And one more question, Melanie, for Courtney.
Sure.
The item on allowing two members to be at the same sort of informational hearing and then reporting on that. So often, not often, but sometimes I'll not purposely see other commissioners in the wild at like a climate change sort of related event. And so if it's unplanned, do we need to report it? And if so, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. And then two, what's like the format for reporting? Does it need to be an agendized item? Like, can you give some process clarity for us on that?
Yeah, I believe what you're describing would actually be considered a chance meeting under the Sunshine Law, and that's okay. And yeah, so that would be okay. Certainly I wouldn't advise or encourage like thereafter sitting down with each other and just being like, oh, what do you think about talking about this at the next commission? Because then that's leaning more into the exception that you would then need to report on. But chance meetings are fine. As far as the report goes, what I would recommend is agendizing it for the next meeting, and what you describe it as, we can talk about that if/when it ever comes up. In general, the agenda line items should be described with enough clarity such that a member of the public could just read it and know exactly what you're going to talk about. So if you said something like report on Commissioner Otsuka and Commissioner Islam's attendance of the UH Convention on Sea Level Rise or something like that, I think that's sufficient for the agenda item. The report itself, I imagine it's essentially what Director Sullivan has been doing or did for the office today. So essentially, this is what happened. This is what we attended. This is what we learned.
So to clarify, does that include chance meetings? Like we should be doing
No.
that. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, got it. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or clarifications from the commissioners? Great. I forgot this in the other agenda items, but any questions from the public on how we engage under Sunshine Law? Maya, do we have anything on Facebook Live? All right, I think we're good. Okay, well, thank you so much, Courtney, again, for making time to present on Sunshine Law with us. If we do have any further questions, we will reach out to you, but this was very informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, team. Moving on to our next agenda item, discussion on delivery methods to convey, the latest science and information on climate impacts to the city in accordance with our commission's charter. So we had started this topic at the last meeting, and I really wanted to bring it up because we are really now in our new full cohort of commissioners as an opportunity for us to talk about what we've done in the past and how we envision making any modifications, if necessary, moving forward, and also as a way to start planning for this particular upcoming year. So in the past, we have prepared guidance documents, and I believe we have a little bit under 10 guidance documents. And historically, those have taken about a year to prepare. They're typically authored by 2 commissioners at one time, and we cycle through all the commissioners, passing ownership of those documents through in order to give each commissioner an opportunity to author the paper and to also lead on either research or community engagement process. I found these processes to be really great in terms of an inclusive process with all the commissioners and with our community and, recognize sort of stakeholders. But I also felt that it's, taking a long time for us to get what I think sometimes is really useful knowledge to the city and to executive departments. And so that's why I kind of bring up this topic to really kind of talk about, are there other ways in which we could convene and relay information out? So I'm just going to share some of the topics that came up in the last meeting and then welcome us to have an open discussion. We had talked about preparing brief memos. Those could be similar to the climate brief we made, or they could be on particular topics. We had talked about tracking legislation, and then either providing testimony as a commission or individual commissioners, both at the state and council level. We had discussed developing presentations, perhaps on past guidance documents that we had prepared as a commission. And then I think one thing that we didn't talk about, but I think could also be on the list, is having maybe a more extensive invite list of presenters, external presenters coming to the commission and using our sort of regularly held meeting. And we typically do them more often in other commissions. We kind of have them monthly as a way to convene discussion between our commission and the city and the executive departments of the city. So those are topics that were discussed, but would really like to have a group discussion on perhaps other strategies, and then following that, any particular topics that we think we as individual commissioners or collectively should start thinking about investigating moving forward for this year. So I open it up to any commissioner to start that discussion. Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, thanks. So in being new and looking at these guidance documents, one of the opportunities I think is to ask our target audiences what has been effective, right? So having them, I think maybe your suggestion of having some of the city county agencies come and chat with us, but with a specific goal of asking them what they need, what formats of information are most useful, have these past guidance documents, hit the mark, or do they look for something that's more infographics, or like what do they need from us?
Great. No, I think that's super helpful. I like the reference of infographics. As a visual person, I just never thought of it, but I think that's also really helpful. Kiana, I think you had some thoughts.
Oh yeah, I was gonna, not that I'm an invasive species expert, but something I've been reading more and more about is the intersection of invasive species and climate change. And sort of how that impacts not only our ecological health, but our ability to be resilient, particularly to things like wildfires. So that might be something, we look into in more depth. In addition to we're talking about a little bit in the climate change memo. So yeah, I guess we also should consider what our expertise are. It's just something I've been reading more about that I'm really interested in.
Great. Thank you. Maybe that could be a topic that we have. Commissioner Romain.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I do like the idea of the potential opportunity to do shorter format writings. We've discussed this in the past meeting or two. Memos. I can think of one example. We heard earlier, about the resilience office, Sarah and team completing the long-term disaster recovery plan. Now that's a great resource that's available. We hope to maybe hear a brief out on that. Is there anything that, as an example, that the commission could do a supplementary memo in a case like that connects that better to the commission's business and other kind of leading edge concerns that we see around climate change that maybe could, that we could help by providing more emphasis on. So yeah, I just want to provide that example. I think that I really like that venue. Like we've done, and the commissioners before my time have done these incredible documents. A lot of work goes into them. They could take months and months. So it would be good, again, reiterating what I said last meeting, I think somewhat, but be able to turn around some resources if they're helpful. Again, like we heard, a second ago, we're hearing from the resilience office too, or elected officials that we could really use some quicker input on this particular topic or that. I think it would allow maybe for some more flexibility, given the process in Sunshine Law, maybe it still takes a couple meetings to react, but maybe faster than the 9 months or a year plus that some of the guidance has taken. Thanks.
Those are great points, Commissioner Romain. I do like that supplemental memo idea a lot. Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Chair. Great comments so far. I would couch mine in an ask and an offer. My offer is I would absolutely love to help make and create materials that can be communicated across a variety of channels, not just the website, but one of the areas that I have seen OCCSR and the City and County of Honolulu as a whole really increase over this administration is tremendous communication channels, the use of podcasts, the use of going on the morning and evening news, the ability to use earned media, I think in a way that helps to spread public information that is digestible of really core scientific facts is something that I would be absolutely happy to contribute in, especially at the Climate and Health Nexus and the Climate and Equity Nexus, and build off of the great work that's already been done in those spaces. And then I think my ask, which is also part of an offer, is if there's not yet a process for us as commissioners to be able to make sure we're utilizing these channels like social media, like the newsletter from MailChimp, I think it's MailChimp, that's the platform that Maya might be using. It would be great if maybe we put a flow chart together so that we could see the different communication channel swim lanes, so that we're making sure that there's cohesion in messaging, but that each of the platforms have different opportunities to reach stakeholders with long and short form recommendations and great science.
Those are excellent recommendations, Commissioner Fox. I think we do need to probably, this would be a good segue maybe to loop in some of your thought, Ben, since your office really kind of manages a lot of that external communication that we see OCCSR doing, but also related to the points that Commissioner Fox recommended. How do we get into those streams? Because I think right now administratively, right, everything goes through your office. And really our voice has been through papers, but I do think putting face and having, people can listen to podcasts, they listen to it so often, right? Having these short snippets. And we had talked about this in our equity pledge, right? About different ways of translating our information into plain language, right? And we had talked about that in different forms of language, but audio is another form of language in which people can, take in this info. So Ben, curious how that structurally, just from a high level, could that potentially happen?
So if the commission has the capacity to do additional communications work, and that's going to support some of the great work that's been developed, we are 100%, we would be appreciative of that for certain. I think the guidance documents are a great place to start because they're so dense in terms of the amount of information. And I think the access to that information is somewhat limiting for the general public just because it takes a background to be able to get in there and have the patience to understand and wade through the information. But a lot of it can be broken out and can be presented in a way that's much more valuable to individuals and to groups. And so putting thought into that is welcome. It's quite a chore. I don't pretend that it's a small task, and I don't know what the structure of doing that work would look like if you just have individuals volunteering to do that, but it certainly wouldn't hurt us to have that additional information, and we would welcome the opportunity to further amplify the work, because I think it is potentially somewhat underutilized in that we haven't built a strong enough channel to deliver it to a broader audience.
Great.
Melanie,
Yeah.
and this is maybe slightly off topic, so steer me back in the right direction, but sort of in terms of capacity, Dr. Fox, if you have capacity, that would be great to help, because I think that's really important. I can see your public health background shining. I think that's so important part of the work we do. But and then maybe we can agendize this for a future meeting. But like, I know we talked about having an intern help the commission and trying to sort out financing and or coordination on that. So maybe future agenda item, and that could help support some of the work that Dr. Fox, or if Dr. Fox, you feel like we can take care of it, great. But if you need support in that realm, something maybe we can talk about at a future meeting.
Yeah, I think we definitely can bring that back up.
Okay.
I'll just give some historical context for Dr. Olson and Dr. Fox. So in the past commissioners like Dr. Allegado, Dr. Keener, and Dr. Kaufman, and Dr. Fletcher have had graduate assistants support the commission through their sort of, I think, funding streams. And so they have never really been a requirement of the commission, but it's just been sort of a supplementary help and support. And so we found value to that, has helped to develop the commission papers to where they have been to this date. So yeah, I think it's worth bringing up, Vice Chair Osuka. It's just a matter of, we can agendize it, and if it is outside of kind of academic realms, what are then the methodologies or methods to fund it, the reality of that. So I say we can talk about it, but we should also think about, like, what could we do within our own sort of voluntary capacity as well too. Because I think we all know searching for the funds to do that work is also a task on itself. And I don't know if that necessarily wants to be, the focus. So yeah, but we can bring it up at one of our next upcoming meetings. I was just trying to sort of read what's in the chat. Commissioner Ryan, do you mind just kind of sharing your thoughts, kind of expanding on the memo?
Sure. Yeah, Chair. I was responding to Kiana's question in the chat there. But yeah, it's an important question. I guess to elaborate a little more on my idea, answering Kiana, was that, yeah, I think if this memo route is useful to folks, it would be a narrower topic than the somewhat broader guidance documents we've had. And I also, yeah, again, I think I mentioned this, but maybe an opportunity to elevate resources from others, including the Resilience Office, university, state offices. Kiana, your mention of that project around investing in evacuation routes or lack thereof in communities, I think was really important. Like, how can we highlight that, elevate that to raise awareness among the elected and agency officials in the city, and then also, I guess, connecting that too with community information also. So I think there's some opportunities there. So yeah, that's what I was trying to get across in the chat there. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks, Commissioner Romine. I just want to add, I will get to you, Commissioner Fox. I've been slowly going through our past guidance documents, and in them are actually a lot of recommendations, additional sort of research areas. And so I welcome the commissioners and to look at those papers that are maybe of particular interest to you, because I think those could be perhaps some of our more immediate topics for supplementary memos that we could potentially provide what I'm going to call maybe a case study, right? That links in kind of project specific, community specific applications, or it could be a different way of distilling the information into like an infographic form, like what Commissioner Olson recommended. So I recommend you guys look at that. There is a lot of information built into it. It could also be areas for future topics in terms of speakers, invited speakers. Yeah, but Commissioner Fox, you had some additional thoughts to share with us.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think my question is for Director Sullivan. Maybe it's a three-part question that I'll try to make really clear. The first is if there have been topics that have come up during the CAP process that you feel like have a groundswell and an energy and a pulse around them that we might want to be able to get in front of for the 2025 to 2030. The second part about that is if there are areas in particular that your counterparts in the city are really maybe grappling with, maybe they're struggling with, and they don't have the latest data or information that we might be able to inform them on. And then just in general, I think my question for Director Sullivan and maybe commissioners in general, just to help bring me up to speed, is any thoughts to how we balance the mitigation, adaptation, and the resiliency side of the information that we share out with the stakeholders, because it can be so much in each one of those spaces, and it looks a little bit different when you language that in a public document.
There's a lot there. I appreciate the questions. I'll start with the CAP groundswell. Certainly, I think with this CAP, the last climate action plan was developed 2019, 2020, and completed in 2021. It was pre-COVID for a lot of the work. And I don't think we had the same acute focus on equity and on community need that we do now. I think, certainly there was a focus there, and you can see it in the language of the document, but it wasn't as deliberate, and it wasn't as intentional. And I think that's essential when we look at what's happened since. And for example, the need, and one of the documents I refer to is just the annual report that the Hawaii Food Bank put out, not too long ago, and talked about how the need has really not waned since COVID, and people are still needing to be helped with supplemental nutrition. So that's a place where obviously we have to talk about climate action in the context of recognizing there's urgent needs in the community, and if these solutions aren't addressing those or aren't making those situations better, then they're not useful, right? Because otherwise we're just asking people to do things that are just not within their reach. Another thing that I think has come up and that we haven't spent a lot of investigation on, but we look forward to in this climate action plan is really talking about full life cycle emissions, and really trying to understand, consumption-based emissions and that aspect, and how to communicate that. I think is going to be somewhat challenging, right? Because it's hard enough to talk about the abstraction of carbon pollution and helping people relate to our tiny piece of the world and its impact on this global system. But then you even go further down the rabbit hole, and you start talking about the production of goods and the energy intensity of different things, and it's a really challenge. So I think amplifying some of those conversations and finding a way to bring those conversations in line with our values as a community is what it really comes down to. And that's never easy, but certainly a priority for us. I don't have an immediate answer on balancing the adaptation and disaster response and mitigation efforts, because we're just going full throttle on all of them, and we've got great people working on them. But to say, certainly the city has some liabilities on the adaptation side that we are working hard to address and to build new systems to address. I think that's a very, very critical priority. And I think on the mitigation side, it's again connecting to what are the savings opportunities? What is the perspective of those that you're working with to make that happen? And we even across the building industry, we have really challenging conversations with the building industry about codes and regulation and the difficulty of looking at the trade-offs between more stringent energy codes and the cost of housing. And it's not possible for us to go into detail on every single measure within the energy code to analyze it and determine what the potential trade-offs are. But there are serious trade-offs, and they matter to somebody having a roof over their head, but they also matter to our ability to deliver carbon reduction. So I guess I'm throwing a bunch of broad answers back at a broad question. I hope you don't mind that, but trying to stimulate some discussion and relate some perspective.
Those are really helpful thoughts, Director Sullivan. I just want to loop in a comment from Tess Sprague. I apologize if I'm not saying your last name correctly. About she noted that she appreciated the guidance documents to date, the value that it provides, kind of the city, but really wanted to kind of specifically highlight how we provide more continued information for the city on translating that scientific data into decision-making processes. And I think in some ways is the underlying charge of what we all provide, right, under our different sort of subject matter hats. And I think that's a great segue into this balance of mitigation versus adaptation and resiliency, and the roles that policy and codes play, right? From wearing my building sector hat, right, I know there is a sort of an upcoming code cycle coming, and there is a huge overlay right now in terms of how anything we do in the building sector affects the cost of living, the cost of bringing homes over people's head. And I personally see that as a direct overlay to the equity aspects in our community, how they can begin to adapt to our changing climate and support their livelihood, right, and their families. And I would find interest, and I don't know how this looks, but in the research that I've been doing, just in the guidance documents, there is that sort of synergy that flows through all the papers. And I think it would be interesting, and maybe it's a workshop session that we as a commission have at the next meeting, but we find a way to sort of workshop these ideas and talk about how we could form, other versions of documentation around this sort of thematic topic that sort of address all those points. Because I could sort of see that it's a common conversation that happens, I think, in all sectors, but it's a very relevant one that drives home to everyone in our community. So yeah, I really appreciate those thoughts without going deeply into something, and I would love to find a way for us to sort of workshop more conversation, more idea, and make those perhaps notes that we have in our meetings publicly available, so that people can sort of see our thinking and to know that we still have to think through process, right, to get to a recommendation. But welcome to hear other thoughts from our commissioners.
So as somebody who's, oh, sorry, Brad, I jumped in front of your yellow hand. Yeah, as somebody really interested in how science does get used and kind of strategies for integrating science into decision problems. I mean, that is a whole field of decision analysis, right? Of like, how does science enter in decision processes? And we do have an expert in state. The new dean of the College of Natural Sciences is a leading figure in decision analysis. It might be somebody that we could invite to talk to us about that kind of formal mechanism of science and decision making. But other suggestions welcome. But I just answering, or responding to Tess. It's like, it's one thing to have summaries of science, right? It's another thing to figure out rigorous and transparent ways to have relevant science entered in at the right moments and processes, right? There's an art to that. So I think that could be an area that we explore moving forward. That would be really interesting.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Brad?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This I wanted to bring this up. It's kind of loosely related to this topic. I wasn't sure where to fit it in our agenda. I guess it's like another matter not on the agenda already, but is, again, kind of loosely related to what we're discussing. Some new data has become available from NOAA about exceedance probabilities related to sea level rise. Just really quickly, like the bathtub flooding models that are done around our coastline really kind of map like 100% exceedance level given a certain amount of long-term sea level rise. Now there's new data available tied to local tide gauges that give 10% or even 1% exceedance probability. I bring it up because it's maybe something we could do a more narrowed focus on. I think it's relevant, important. It's a relevant update to the sea level rise guidance, maybe deserves like a supplemental memo, or maybe it's just revisions to the existing sea level rise guidance. So yeah, I think I should stop there. I think what I'm really asking is for this to hopefully be, we could put it on as a agenda item in a future meeting, maybe October if there's space. But I do think maybe this is one route, at least an area that I'm done quite a bit of work in, that we could maybe do something a little more targeted, more narrow, focused on.
I think that's a great idea. We can certainly make space for this and agendize it for our October meeting. But I think that kind of thinking, right, is I think I'm going to say the homework as we as commissioners can think about coming into October is thinking about the subject matter that we bring to the commission. What critical relevant information is it worth us investigating near term, right? What is the best format to deliver that? Does any of that complement or build upon existing information and knowledge that we have already prepared as a commission and shared out with our city council and our executive branch? So
yeah, Chair. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, one more thing I wanted to add to that. I just thought, and folks, tell me if you feel you agree, and this is kind of for our new commissioners too. I think we consider the guidances that we've done more or less as living documents, right? I mean, we are able to go in there and update and revise as needed. I think that's what I'd be suggesting in the particular example I just mentioned. That's another avenue too for keeping those guidances current. And when we do a change like that, it's an opportunity to say, hey, there's new science on this, and bring it back up to everybody.
Yes, I would fully agree. I see them as living documents, because we presented information that was relevant, and available at that time. So I think it's worth updating. We have a lot of really great information out there. It's all posted on OCCSR's website. So it's all publicly available. And yeah, I think if we can update those, the current precedent that we have for updates is really the climate brief. And I think the sea level rise document, two of which were actually charged by the mayor at the time. But yeah, I think updating this also shows continuity. And it allows, at least if there are city departments that are following that particular guidance document, to understand sort of the evolution of that science and that recommendation. So if I could summarize the homework, sorry to call it homework, but look at the guidance documents, see, look at it through the lens that you currently work in, maybe go slightly outside of that lens and see if there are particular topics that are worth, immediate investigation and update. I do believe that this memo process is something worth exploring, because I think that will get more immediate information to the city. But I do want to ask, and Director Sullivan, maybe this is where you can come in. Is there a way for us to understand if the memos are being shared out to executive departments? And if so, how are they being best used? I know your office is using it, but are other offices using these pieces of information?
So as the opportunity arises, certainly we share them for relevant projects, but I wouldn't say that there's an active channel for distribution of the guidance. There's just, as you understand, I think, well, there's so many things going on in an enterprise this size that it's there's pieces of information all over. So our job is to be conscious of what other departments are doing and where there's relevant information. A lot of the guidance is more specific to our work, and some of it, although it may be relevant to the work of other agencies, they're not necessarily stopping and looking for it. So I think that's the candid reality of how the guidance sits. There's certainly exceptions to that. I think the sea level rise guidance is incredibly valuable when you think about infrastructure and projects that are ongoing. It all has high value. It's just a question of timing and appetite, and it's a challenging thing, but we can certainly also continue to push more on getting it out. And I think the previous discussion about the digestibility of it and the presentation of it might be useful, and even just narrowing to individual points in terms of some of the key findings is also a really valuable way to get it out, because again, it's not always welcome when you hand one of your peers who's got a list of 40 items to get done in the next 2 hours. Here's a 5-page document that's really full of material you're not familiar with, but you should read it and try to incorporate it into your work. So I'm sure you can all relate to that, even though it is critically important. And that's that is really my job and our job to help distribute that stuff. So we'll continue to do so.
I appreciate that, Ben. I do want to add one thing. Commissioner Fox, I really do like your idea of exploring different communication channels. If you don't mind maybe connecting with Ben's office to understand maybe what those streams could be, and then sharing them back at our next October meeting, I think we can incorporate that into our different methodologies of outreach.
Would be happy to, Chair. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Fox. Commissioners, any other thought? I want to open it up to the public to see if they have any thoughts to this topic.
Just one last thing from me. I think if we can maybe focus in on some key recommendations when we do sort of our homework of sort of what we hope to have incorporated policy-wise or processes-wise, that might be really helpful. I just want to give a really quick example at a meeting I had today for my job. I was sort of able to point to the commission guidance on, that we should consider the 3.2 feet of sea level rise and in any sort of city investment moving forward. So it's like a very useful thing we can sort of help push on the city side, like that sort of guidance from us is sort of helpful in processes. So I do a little bit of work with the city also. So I was able to point to that kind of stuff for the work that I do. And I'm sure it would be helpful for the city departments to also consider in their processes as well as planning and future investment. So I just wanted to plug a thank you previous commissioners who worked on that, and or just point if there's really specific things we think could be incorporated in processes that might be helpful.
Great point, Vice Chair. Okay, we have about half an hour, so I just want to be respectful of that time. Any comments, thoughts from the community on this topic? Tess, hi, feel free to share.
Hi, sorry, I'm in a darker spot right now, so hopefully you can see there's a real human here, but I just wanted to, again, thank the chair and the commissioners for considering that comment. And one thing to keep in mind as we're talking about the discussion of scientific data, how we translate that, use that into policy, something that has come up just as background. I'm a scientist, planner, and lecturer in different areas, especially this. And it's really wonderful to be able to have the opportunity to be here and hear from all you, especially for some of the projects that we're working on, and also working with Dr. Fletcher and his team. One thing to consider is just the updates, the frequency of updates for that scientific data, particularly when we're talking about recommendations for city and county agencies and how often they may need to update their guidance for example, updating sea level rise levels, what to consider when we're talking about infrastructure investments that may span an asset life cycle of 50 plus years. So just something to maybe keep in mind as well. folks want to build in flexibility, learn how to build in flexibility with their processes, and also leverage most up-to-date data. But sometimes there's a challenge with when do you update that data and how do you rely on that? So just wanted to share that additional consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess, for pointing that out. Very, very valid, the flexibility and sort of how we slowly, adapt based on sort of the work at hand. So very relevant. All right, Maya, is there anything from Facebook Live? None from Facebook Live. Great. I think this was an excellent conversation. Anything more that commissioners want to add before I move on to the next agenda item? Great. Awesome. Okay, so a discussion on our next meetings. I believe Karan sent out a poll to everyone. I have received all of the dates, and our next meeting is scheduled for October 25th from 9 to 11 a.m. I believe Karan sent out an Outlook meeting invite. I hope that date still works for everyone. But we have been able to schedule out until March 28th. And a lot of these are placeholder dates, but just to kind of get in all of our busy calendars. So I'm going to read out the dates, and I think Karan will then be sending them out. All of these meetings are in the morning from 9 to 11. And those dates include November 22nd, December 13th, January 24th, February 21st, and March 28th. So we have for the next 2 quarters our meetings. Yeah, and if anything does change, we can coordinate around that, but it's always good, I think, to have a placeholder. And then also when we're thinking about scheduling speakers and having discussion on our topics, we have these sort of dates as target dates. Thank you, Kiana. All right. I'm going to move on to item number 9. It's communication and correspondence from the public. We didn't receive anything, so I'm going to immediately move on to the next topic, public input for matters not on the agenda. I can start with our commissioners.
I never remember if I should put my announcements. I think it's announcements.
Yours is announcements. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'll bring up one item. We looked at it early 2023. It was tied to our social equity paper, but it was our equity pledge. And that related to, I think, our commitment to going in person, right, as much as possible. But I want to bring that up because I think it's important for us to review it again as a new commission with new members on board, so that we can kind of all refresh our pledge collectively, and then to have us think about the value of trying to meet in person. We had talked about that in the past to get more specific to different communities around the island. But we had recognized that there were some administrative challenges, logistical challenges, not just with getting the required tech and space, but also, family challenges that people might have. So I think there's more thought that needs to come to this. But in our next October meeting, I think we may put on the agenda just reviewing the equity pledge and having some discussion around that. So.
Melanie, I just wanted to clarify, I think the desire for an in-person meeting isn't in the equity pledge. It was just an ask from Dr. Algado. And I think we've been trying to have one and figure out logistical issues, but the equity pledge does sort of guide if we do have an in-person meeting, how do we choose the location? And then there are some performance measures meant to be in place that then reports back to us if we met our sort of goals for in-person meetings. So I plugged my own, I helped to rewrite some of it. My pledge was all meeting locations we choose have to be within a quarter mile of the bus stop. Like that's the kind of stuff that are in there. So I think, mostly driven by Dr. Algado to have a meeting in person. I don't disagree, but the equity pledge specifically sort of guides where we have these meetings and how.
True. That's a great clarification. Yeah. I still think there is value in trying to have some in person. But Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Chair. This was actually one of my questions, so I'm happy that we're bringing it up in this agenda item. I'd love to, especially because so much work went into scheduling through March 28th, 2025. Perhaps we can put, I know we all love and are inundated by polls, but perhaps we can also vote one more time on now each of these dates and the times being set, if we can shoot for a in-person meeting for any of them and then come to an agreement that maybe not all are, but maybe at least we can walk away with two or so commitments at first, and let's try it out. We're scientists. Let's pilot it and see what works and what barriers we need to overcome.
I think that's a fair request. And I can work with Coran to get that sent out. I do believe in the past we did meet in person prior to, I think, all of us jumping on board. So yeah, I think it'd be good. And I guess in that poll, we can put location of those in-person meetings if there are any restrictions. But Ben, if you could clarify, we always have an in-person meeting live and open, right? During these commission meetings in the conference room?
Our conference room on the 11th floor is made available to members of the public, yes.
Okay, okay, all right.
As we've noted before, I just want to highlight that there is a staffing consideration that we don't have an immediate need to overcome in order to support the commission in remote meetings. And certainly, I would look at whatever we might be able to do, but I just want to advise that this time we don't have the resources and staffing to be able to support that ourselves. So it would be something the commission would have to determine a method to do independently.
Understood. Okay. All right, well, let's first start with the poll and go from there. Courtney.
My apologies. I was trying to find my cursor. Okay. So just to, earlier I was asked if the commission was required to have a remote option, I believe, if you were holding an in-person meeting. And I haven't found anything that makes it a requirement. Of course, if you're doing any sort of remote meeting, you are always required to have an in-person option available. And also Commissioner Islam, yes, and in the before times, it was all in person. And we are now in the post-Panini era. But yeah, so I wasn't able to find anything that directly said that you must have a online option if you're doing in-person only. I do know that in the past, when it was in-person only, the commission would still have like that online streaming Facebook Live going on at the same time, but I don't believe that that is an actual requirement if you're doing only in-person completely.
Okay, that's good to know. More for us to think about, but let's maybe just get through the dates, right? As we look at our calendars to see if we are able to sort of convene together. And then we can talk through the logistics of that at one of the next meetings once we get that poll out. So I will work with Ben's office and Karen to get that poll out to everyone. Great. Any discussion from the public on items that are currently not on the agenda? All right, hearing none. Announcements. Kiana, anything you would like to share?
Oh yeah, this is my monthly update or monthly reminder that we have a state electric bike and electric moped rebate. And at the moment, to be eligible for the rebate, you have to meet one of three criteria. So you participate in a low income assistance program such as SNAP or Section 8 housing vouchers. You do not own a motor vehicle, or you are currently enrolled in school, college, or university. And that makes you eligible for up to $500 off or 20% of the retail price of a new electric bike or electric moped. And I will pop the link to the application for the rebate in the chat. Thank you.
Great. Any announcements by other commissioners? I'll share two. So we have two upcoming conferences for our building industry. One is the Pacific Building Trade Expo, which is on October 2nd. There's a small fee to attend, but there will be a lot of discussion on related to the building sector in terms of mitigations of carbon emissions, adaptation in housing, how we're sort of addressing the Lahaina housing. And then on the next day, U.S. Green Building Council Hawaii is doing a forum called Building Transformation Forum. And I just found out Ben Sullivan is our keynote. So yeah, I'll throw all of these into the chat for you guys to look at. But you know, if these topics are of interest to you, there's an agenda included in it. Feel free to attend. All right. Otherwise, if there are no other topics, sorry, is there anything from the public on announcements? Seeing none, I think we're good. Great. Well, this brings us to the end of our agenda with about 20 minutes left in your Friday afternoon. So thank you everyone so much for joining. I think this was a really great discussion, specifically on like other ways to deliver information, latest information in science to the city. And so I look forward to hearing thoughts at our October meeting. Commissioner Remind, I will follow up with you on the agenda topic. And then Commissioner Olson, I also think you had a potential agenda topic as well too. So please look for my emails. Thank you everyone so much. Have a great Friday and have a great weekend. And we'll see you guys in October.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye.